much pressure coming out from the hunters so fast that you kind of got to go for some of these cheesy lines that rely on a top deck. Turns
Turn
top
8.
deck to Alexstrasza.
Yep, and Deadly Shot was just top decked by Surrender, so you can deal with the Doomsayer if you attack first into the Acolyte. That will give additional drop to Ostkaka, but I don't feel that's really that big of a deal when you sacrifice. Sorry, when you save 3 of your minions on board.
Yeah, it looks like Surrender's going to be taking the Unleash here. You don't really get much better than 2 minions for Unleash the Hound's value against
Yep.
Against a Freeze Mage.
Oh, what an unfortunate joust.
Yeah, he was hoping for maybe a Kodo there, I imagine. But it looks like now we're going to see the Hounds come out, and he's not going to Deadly Shot the Doomsayer. He's going to save the Deadly Shot to be able to deal with a potential Alexstrasza. Not sure how much I like that line.
To be honest, I don't like this at all.
Yeah, I feel like your board can kill Alexstrasza if Alexstrasza comes down. If you take out the Doomsayer.
And your opponent didn't have an ice block, so you would just kill him. There was no incentive to
maybe there is an ice block, and maybe there is an ice block, yeah, and we just don't see it, yeah. We'll see maybe if Ostkaka plays the other secret, if it slides over to the side, and then we'll know if there's an ice block or not. But yeah, it's definitely a questionable play. That's one that you can look back on and say maybe a game-deciding moment there, one way or the other. But weird. Yeah, there was no ice block.
That's a really weird play. I mean, he used the Unleash the Hounds as just a 2 damage source.
Yeah.
Interesting. Really can't, like, I'm trying to browse through the game state at that point to feel any kind of reasons. Why would you sacrifice board with 4, 8, 10, 13, 15 damage, 15 power on board, when there was an option to just kill the Doomsayer? And the important thing is that he played the Alec, he didn't win the Joust, so he didn't get anything from that minion. He was just sacrificed for 2 mana and a card disadvantage, a heavy card disadvantage when you consider he also didn't win the Joust.
Yeah, it was definitely a curious line. It's going to give Ostkaka a window of opportunity to come back in this game from a seemingly unwinnable position. Now Ostkaka has the Alexstrasza, and he can start trying to set up lethal. He may be forced into a situation where he wants to freeze this high main, and then he won't have 15 damage for the deck, but he does top deck the Frost Nova. If the Thalnos sticks on the board after the Alexstrasza, then Ostkaka will be able to deal lethal damage.
Yep, that is the perfect situation here. I mean maybe second Frostbolt would have been better.
Yeah, maybe. He just needs 1 more face damage with his... Or does he actually? Yeah, 1 more face damage with his combination of current cards, and then he's able to lethal. So he cycles the Thalnos looking for more burn spells or more stall, because he doesn't have a block up yet. He only has barrier up. So he would have really liked to get a barrier that turn to try and ensure that he doesn't die and get into a situation where he can more safely play Alexstrasza, because he has to worry about Kill Command potentially killing him through the ice barrier here.
Yep.
So yeah, as long as Surrender doesn't swing, he still has the out of just Kill Command, Hero Power, killing Ostkaka through the ice barrier. Looks like he might be Unleash the Houndsing to remove that 1/1. It plays around...
Yeah, please continue.
It plays around to the Alexstrasza-ing you, and then the Novice Engineer poking you from 1 down to 14, setting you to die to Fireball, Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Ping. So it would actually play around the burn combo Ostkaka has been holding on to this entire game. So it's a pretty heads-up play around getting down to 14 when on the Alex turn.
It's true. I don't know what to think about that Thalnos sacrifice, you know? Seems like at one point, as you said just exactly right now, it's very important to comboing without the spell power.
Yeah, but he needs the ice block though before he can safely Alexstrasza. So he's like too worried right now that the card in Surrender's hand is Kill Command, because if it was Deadly Shot, which it is, but if it was Deadly Shot, I imagine Ostkaka assumes Surrender would have killed the Doomsayer with it. So he's not pinning it on being Deadly Shot. He's pinning it on being kill command. That's the only card in Ostkaka's head that makes sense for him to be holding on to this long. So Ostkaka's assuming he's probably dead here to kill command.
Huh.
So he's just trying to figure out a way.
if he Alexstrasza's now and Ice Lances the Savannah Hymen, he's left with 4, 7, 10 damage in his hand. That's the problem.
Yeah, but he's still dead to the perceived kill command in Surrender's hand, so that's why he's roping on this, and I guess he's coming to a conclusion here that he just has to risk it and go for the Alexstrasza and hope there's no kill command. But no, he's Alexstraszaing himself up to play around the kill command, which is actually a deadly shot.
Wow.
Just because of the misplay that Surrender made earlier on, or questionable play of ignoring the Doomsayer, has led Ostkaka to believe that this deadly shot is a kill command. So.
And Ostkaka is like, this is one of the time when I see Ostkaka actually doing any kind of emotion move on camera. You know, usually he's just like totally stoic on stream.
Yeah.
He's like just staring at the screen, not blinking even. But when something like this happens, when he's almost certain that he outplayed his opponent, and then it turns out it's a double bluff, and that was the deadly shot, he reacted.
So maybe the questionable play from Surrender might be the reason why he won this game, because Ostkaka was convinced that was a kill command. Yeah. Absolutely convinced by the line that Surrender took that was a kill command.
It could have been as well a quick shot though.
It could have been as well a quick shot, yeah. And then that forced Ostkaka to do a defensive Alexstrasza, where if he went for an offensive Alexstrasza, he would have won the game. So some mind games going on here. That's really interesting. Some pretty next level plays.
If he attacks here with the weapon, then there's a huge chance that he will he actually plays more than one weapon. I assume would be 2. Because why would you attack this turn, right?
Yeah, there must be another bow in the deck, so he's trying to push for additional damage there by taking the swing this turn. Ostkaka's damage in hand is up to 19 damage, so with an additional burn spell of the other torch or a fireball, he could potentially be setting up lethal pretty soon, but the problem is he needs to string along enough freezes to make sure that happens.
And he used 2 Frost Novas.
Yeah, he used 2 Frost Novas, so the only freezes are blizzards, and if he does blizzard, he is taking damage from the infested wolf. So it's a really awkward situation.
And from the hyenas as well.
Yeah, it's just so much damage on the board. Wow, it's going to be really tough for him to dig his way out of this.
Wow, this is a really interesting situation. I feel like not often you see that kind of play when Surrender kind of makes a misplay as we perceive it from our perspective,
and then it turns out to win in the game.
Yeah, but it's not because because he was just outplaying his opponent by.
He went all in bluffing that he had kill command in his hand to force Ostkaka to defensive Alex.
Yeah, I'm still trying to think if that was like a play that he was thinking of the entire time, because if yes, then that's pretty genius. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just lucky coincidence, but it's something to consider when you're playing. But
Ostkaka's on a top deck to win the game. If Ostkaka top decks a Roaring Torch or a Fireball, then he can Fireball ping or Roaring Torch ping and play the second ice block and have Pyroblast for lethal. So Ostkaka still has a chance. He has very few cards left in his deck, and he cycled in the Roaring Torches already, so he has a pretty decent shot of actually being able to draw it here.
Let's see what he draws. Frostbolt.
Not good enough. What? So Ostkaka is going to concede. He's not going to spend the additional time to play the ice block that turn. He knows he has no outs at this point. Pretty intense game 1.
Yeah, pretty intense. I would love to see to hear if Surrender made that on purpose, that move on purpose, or was that just a straight misplay from his perspective. It feels like a total waste, right? From if you would not see your opponent's hand, it feels like a total waste to not kill the Doomsayer.
These players, they know each other. They know the way each other think. They're both extremely high-level players with a lot of tournament accomplishments, both winning over like $50,000 in prize money apiece in Hearthstone events. So I'm sure that knowing each other's practice tendencies, playing with each other a lot, that there's some mind games involved in some of these turns, and I'm fairly confident that Surrender set that up and bluffed for that kill command. I think it's genius.
Oh, sorry. My microphone just went rogue. I backstab it.
There you go. Sap it. Well, don't do that, then we can't hear you.
Yeah, that's kind of bad, but at least Twitch chat would be happy to see a castle being sapped.
Yeah, Twitch chat loves that, don't they?
So, as you mentioned before, Ostkaka actually plays the Zoo that he loves so much. But he's facing a Paladin. And that is a good deck to overrun. If your opponent, because Paladin is usually very slow when it comes to AoE effects. He has a Consecration Tin 4. Other options are Pyromancers, but not every single Paladin plays 2 of those. So it's an interesting matchup.
Yeah, the matchup usually revolves around some key points. And the key point number 1 is Doomsayer on 2. When the Paladin has Doomsayer on 2, they buy themselves like infinitely more time because the Zoo Warlock snowballs a lot less. Their tempo just gets immediately halted, and their buff cards that would be coming down on the later turns can't really come down as easily just because the initial minions were wiped out. And so when N'Zoth Paladin has Doomsayer on 2, their win rate in this matchup goes up dramatically. But we see Surrender does not have the Doomsayer on 2, so Ostkaka is going to be able to snowball this board state. He could even play the Direwolf Alpha right now if he wanted to and just start pushing so much additional damage. We see him go for it. It's just so much power so fast because there was no Doomsayer to stop the snowballing, and the Direwolf Alpha is 4 power on the board right now.
Yep, that is a huge thing. And Paladin, we know that in current metagame there's no more Masterful Battle, so no easy way to replenish the board on turn 3. There's no weapon that can deal with a minion that has right now 2 HP, unless people will start to play the... Oh my god, what's the name of it? The Joust weapon. Oh god, Lance.
Argent Lance?
Yes, exactly. It feels sometimes viable as a weapon. The reason why is that the same reason basically goes for Hunter, because most of the time you use the weapon as a trade source, and that means you need to just call a metagame and see if there's enough minions that have free HP to kill those minions with the weapon. Same be the case here in Paladin, if there's just enough of minions that have 2 HP to actually play that with no benefit. Like, let's say Hunter doesn't play even traps, he just plays the bow without the effect. It's just a good, decent weapon, right? And I could say the same about the weapon from Paladin.
Sure, yeah, would have been able to deal with this Direwolf Alpha and stop the snowballing, but he doesn't have it currently. Instead, he's just got a whole bunch of janky stuff, and we might see the Spellbreaker come down to try and slow down this Direwolf Alpha. It's just posing so much damage, but he does put the Spellbreaker down. Motioning now for the Acolyte of Pain, just wants to try and find his equality combos in time before he's dead.
The problem is he leaves 4 minions for that legendary play, which is turn 4 Gormog. But at the same time, you can't really play around it in most of the situations, because you tend to not play around a card that is a one-off in an opponent's deck, especially so early.
Yeah, and this all just traces back to Surrender not having the key cards being Doomsayer, True Silver, Consecrate in this matchup. And if you don't stop Zoo's early pressure, if you just let Zoo do Zoo, Zoo's gonna wreck you. They snowball so hard. We see him using Humility here just to remove 2 damage from the board. This Direwolf Alpha still presenting 4. Gormok can come down, deal an additional 4, and then be a 4/4 body. It's just everything is working out for Ostkaka because his board hasn't been touched, and these buff cards just keep working off each other to just accelerate his board lead.
Yep. Completely agree. When you just lose against Zoo very fast, you just feel like overrun by literally a zoo, but just animals running over you like a stampede. There's the Gormok, deals with the Acolyte of Pain. Interesting, because with the Soulfire in hand and Abusive Surgeon, I was thinking maybe he will just go aggressive and just deal additional 4 damage.
Yeah, I wouldn't have hated it either way. He wants to deny the draws, I guess, to try and make the equality combos a little bit harder to find. This also protects his Direwolf Alpha. Direwolf Alpha is presenting 4 power on the board, so allowing that to die for free is pretty expensive for Ostkaka, so he doesn't want to allow the Acolyte of Pain to run into that Direwolf Alpha, drawing 2 cards and essentially killing 4 damage from Ostkaka's board. And Surrender's under so much pressure, he can't even True Silver Champion here to kill off the Gormok, which is generally speaking a prime target for True Silver Champion. He just has to heal and hope he finds an equality combo next turn. He's being taken to the zoo.
What a trip.
Yeah.
He has the Leroy already in hand, which also is a great factor for Ostkaka. You just basically have a fireball now.
Yeah, and even if Surrender is able to clear off this board, he's facing down 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 damage this turn, 13, 14 with the Abusive Sergeant, and that means Ostkaka has then 10 damage in his hand after the fact with Leroy Soulfire. So if Surrender goes Equality Consecrate, kills everything on the board, he's just gonna die. And it's a really sad feeling when even if you kill everything on the board, you're dead. So
there's the Pyromancer, which helps a lot.
He's got to be feeling good.
Yeah, well, it clears almost the entire board because it leaves a 1/1. But that's about it. And you're at 10 HP, so you're not feeling that bad. Your opponent did draw around 9 cards, if I'm not mistaken. It's turn 6.
Yeah, not too many cards in Ostkaka's hand, so it's unlikely for Ostkaka to be able to kill Surrender from this position, and Surrender's hoping to be able to slowly heal out throughout the course of the game, but Ostkaka has drawn the Leroy, has drawn the Soulfire, and that's sort of the tech Ostkaka runs in his deck. He loves running those double Soulfire Leroy Zoo decks, and it's been performing for him really well. We saw it in EU versus CN, where he was able to take third. I don't think he even dropped a game with his Zoo Warlock there. It's just been an exceptional deck for him. Really,
I like the Soulfire, but I don't know what to think about double Soulfire. It just feels like, it's with Doomguard you can actually plan somehow the effectiveness of double Doomguards, especially even without Void Colors now in the metagame. You can still do that, but with the Soulfire, it's completely useless unless you win the game or have a perfect target with 4 HP. So let's say against a Rogue, it might be useful because you buy the tempo that the Rogue could have get in the first place because of preparation, but you kill the Azure Drake or let's say the Tomb Pillager, and you're still, even though you sacrifice 1 card, it's still okay because you can just play your own minions after that. But otherwise, I'm kind of not sold of the idea on double Soulfires. But of course, when something like this happens and your opponent just plays a Leroy Jenkins and just goes with a Soulfire or PO, it's ultimately very powerful.
Yeah, you got to factor all those things in. You lower the consistency of your draws of the early game curve, but increase your potential to Leroy Soulfire people in the face. And turns out Leroy Soulfire people in the face is pretty good.
Pretty damn good.
Yeah, so the Rogue from Ostkaka coming up against an Azoth Paladin from Surrender. How do you feel about this matchup?
I was exactly about to ask you the same question because I'm so unfamiliar with this matchup. I play Rogue a lot, but then Zod Paladin is something I didn't encounter often on a ladder.
Yeah,
it's like
it's really starting to fall out of the ladder metagame a lot lately.
It feels like it's a bigger competitive it's a bigger of a competitive deck in the Conquest environment, especially with the ban, than in a usual ladder system. So I'm not sure, to be honest. I would favor the Rogue. As I'm a Rogue player, I'll always favor the Rogue in most situations, unless it's against a Freeze Mage.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, Rogue is definitely a solid favorite in the matchup. They just have really annoying things that they can do with the amount of burst that they have, and Sap being able to take care of some of the big minions from Paladin, but it can sometimes fall in favor than Azoth Paladin, because Azoth Paladin has things like Ragnaros. The Rogue can occasionally miss their gadgets in Auctioneer and not be able to cycle. True Silver Champion from the Paladin is the most important card in the matchup. If they have True Silver Champion on 4, you could see here it would just slaughter this Tomb Pillager and then slaughter the Azure Drake right afterwards, granting the Paladin a lot of early game tempo and mid game control. But without True Silver Champion, Rogue just has a field day on the Paladin, because then they get forced in these situations where they gotta quality consecrate all these minions that could have been killed by True Silver, and then they don't have it for the gadgets and conceal, and it just gets really messy really fast.
Oh wow, we see the poor draw. Auctioneer into an conceal. He just needs at least 1 prep to make this super powerful. Because the problem when you play against the Paladin, as you pointed out, equality and consecration is one of the ways to actually deal with a concealed Gazetan. And that is super important in this matchup. Otherwise, it will be just run over by Cold Bloods and Leo Jenkins at some point.
Yeah, Ostkaka has double Tomb Pillagers, so one of the ways that I imagine he's thinking about playing this game is making sure both of the Tomb Pillagers are out there and dead before he even goes for his gadget, just to make sure he can play around the Equality Consecrate on the gadget, get as many card cycles in beforehand, and not have to worry about that being an issue. So I would be surprised if he actually even goes for the gadgets and Coin Conceal next turn, even though it seems like such a great and strong play. It's just, it doesn't cycle enough cards around that Equality Consecrate, and Paladin's so slow that you can afford to just play out more Tomb Pillagers and play the slow game and make sure all your other you have as much mana to cycle with your gadgets and Auctioneer as possible.
Especially since he has already an Azure Drake in his hand, and that is kind of like an Auctioneer just for one turn, so it would be a surprise as well. Wow, he actually goes for it.
He does go for it. I'm interested, like, the Paladin's not doing anything to you. They're just going to be playing their things. You could sit here and contest the board quite evenly with Azure Drakes, Tomb Pillagers, and things of that nature, and not have to expose yourself. But I guess he just feels like, might as well do it now, get it out of the way. If it gets Equality Consecrated, it's not a big deal. Then I can just flood the board with minions afterwards, and they won't have their AoE to deal with my minions then. So, I'd say a little bit punished, though, the Gadgetson going down here. If he doesn't find another Gadgetson, it could be kind of awkward for him.
Thank you.
Sorry, my cat is just lying on my keyboard and just moves everything. I don't know what he did. I think actually he hid my Skype. Oh, here we go.
Ragnaros for Surrender is drawn, so if he's able to kind of contest this board a little bit, stay relatively healthy, then Ragnaros coming down next turn is going to be extremely powerful. Ostkaka leaves up the Acolyte of Pain, which does open Surrender the option of Equality this turn to try and pave way for his Ragnaros. After seeing...
Yep, please.
After seeing the Gadgets and Auctioneer being taken care of, like, I feel like Surrender can afford to use Equality to trade 1-for-1 just because there's no threat of Gadgets and Auctioneer from Ostkaka, so... Wow, Trucer was a pretty big top tech there.
That is a pretty big deal, especially since every single minion that will be played from Ostkaka now will be just killed by the powerful swing of that sword. Well, at least it's an Edwin, and that can be made as 6/6, but the problem is that the Paladin didn't play yet a second Peacekeeper or a Keeper of Ulduman, and that's the ideal scenario to have against an Edwin.
For sure.
So that basically kills it with the combination of True Silver Champion.
Yeah, you can expect the Edwin to likely die here, so that's a little bit unfortunate for Ostkaka. You can sometimes, since both equalities are gone, save it for your end-all win condition and make just a giant one and conceal it, and then just bash him in the face with it with your Leroy combo, dealing over 30 damage in one turn. Or you can use it right now to try and force your opponent to have to answer it, because if Surrender has to answer Edwin Van Cleef in this turn, he cannot play one of his 8-drops, and 8-drops are the most common super power turn for N'Zoth Paladin, where they have Ragnaros the Light Lord, Fire Lord, and Tyrion. So we do see it come out for Ostkaka here, just to try and impede the development of one of those 8-drops.
I don't very like that. Even though Paladins are 25 HP, so I would not blame him just to play the Ragnaros, kill the Farseer, and just go for the 50-50. What will Rogue do with a Ragnaros? He needs to use a backstab Eviscerate with spell power to deal instant 8 to it, or has to be a Shadow Strike with Eviscerate, or any other kind of really wasteful usage of projectiles from the Rogue player.
Yeah, that was one line he could have taken there. He feels a little bit unsafe. He's scared of potential Leroy combos killing him. Seeing his opponent go for such an aggressive early Gadgetson probably signals to Surrender that there's maybe a lot of burn damage in Ostkaka's hand. We can see that there's not, but if there's like Leroy Cold Blood Eviscerate, that plus the Edwin connection would kill Surrender if he loses the 50-50 on the Rag. So he's going to be a little bit more patient, try and set up a clean board for Ragnaros or Tyrion to come down on a following turn, and save Rag for more crucial snipes, maybe sniping a Gadgetson Auctioneer later on in the game. But it is really passive.
Yep, I agree. Sap on the Doomsayer, which probably happened to the Ragnaros as well, but if the Ragnaros would have killed the Edwin, that would be such an impactful turn.
Yeah, if the Edwin was gone, it would not be cold-blooded and hit him in the face there, but he didn't want to gamble. Sometimes in bad matchups, you really got to take some risks, and usually 50-50 isn't the worst risk to take, but he probably felt like his hand was strong enough that he could play the slow game, and maybe he's getting a little bit punished here for trying to go that route.
Well, it's a lot. 1 mana for 4 damage. That's quite a lot. It's better than Eviscerate, that's for sure.
Yeah, and since he held back the Ragnaros last turn because he was afraid of dying, he's got to be really afraid of dying now. But he did see a sap used, so he could potentially get away with a Tyrion this turn, something like that. Or maybe he goes for the risky rag flip now.
After seeing the first sap being played on a Doomsayer, I would still be kind of cautious about the Tyrion, because it feels like most of the time your opponent still has the second sap when he makes just a move like sapping the Doomsayer. Most likely he still has access to burn that he just didn't want to use on the Doomsayer, right?
Right. So we do see the Ragnaros come down from Surrender. Just like you, he feels kind of uncomfortable playing the Tyrion out there with only seeing 1 sap being used, even though it was just used. So he gets the Rag out there, and Ostkaka's going to have a really easy time cleaning up this Rag thanks to the benefit of the spell power from the Ether Drake. So he's going to be able to clean up the entire board and continue pushing additional damage. But is starting to finally fizzle out of cards because he was only able to cycle 2 cards off his Gadgets and Auctioneer.
She will help a little bit. It's a 2 damage still. Oh, a Conceal. Well, that's something that you can consider on this turn.
Yeah, I would like to see the Conceal a lot.
You know, you have an Eviscerate, still fan of knives. Yeah, I like this a lot. The single Conceal basically does the same as the Cold Blood, deals 4 damage for 1 mana, but it allows you to combo the second Cold Blood with it. Because you will most likely have a minion that will be played, right?
No.
Sorry, a minion that could have been the Cold Blood could have been targeted on.
Yeah, so it could help your second Cold Blood connect for sure, and just be super threatening because concealed spell power. But without concealing it, he's saving Conceal maybe for Gadgets and Auctioneer for more cycles, because Ostkaka's deck is still pretty thick remaining, so he feels he needs more value than just damage, because he's afraid Surrender can maybe just heal outside of range of his potential hand currently and wants to be able to cycle more. So Surrender can heal quite nicely outside of the range while also using its True Silver Champion to clear here, and I imagine he does it. And the reason why he wants to get this heal in here, even though it's not the most efficient heal turn, is because it's going to allow him to pave the way to be able to get Tyrion down in later stages of the game, so he doesn't have to worry about just dying to a sap if he plays Tyrion.
So what is your stance on the Conceal then? Because my theory is that when you already use 1 Gazetan and your deck is pretty thick still, then you switch the style to more aggressive
yeah.
style,
I tend to agree with you, yeah. I usually start using my Conceals aggressively, trying to set up damage and just try and push my way through rather than having to rely on top decking exclusively Gadgets and Auctioneer. But we do see the Conceal being used now, so Ostkaka also agrees with you. He just didn't agree with you last turn. He wanted 1 more draw for Gadgets and Auctioneer. He was still believing, and now he's forced to go with the all-in play.
But the problem is that Leroy Jenkins, it's kind of horrible against Paladins with Consecrations, right?
Yeah, we could see Surrender try and draw here to try and find Consecration. We could also see the potential for Tyrion and Doomsayer coming down. Ostkaka has yet to use any Eviscerates, but he has used 1 Cold Blood. So if you count the max possible damage from Ostkaka with 4 cards, it's like Cold Blood, Eviscerate, which is 4, 8, 12, and then you would need to squeeze a sap in there. So you need to be so you can assume maybe he has 3 of these. So you can say, sure, you can have Eviscerate, Sap, Cold Blood, but he does actually end up drawing those cards. But it's only going to be 14 damage, and then you're not going to be able to answer the Doomsayer, and that's going to be able to go off and allow Surrender to potentially come back in this game. But Ostkaka has so much damage here, he can set Surrender down all the way to 1 if he wanted to, but I imagine he's going to hold back the SI7. He also had the potential to clearing the Doomsayer there with the Eviscerate SI7 Dagger Poke, but wants to try and set up the lethal. Surrender has 1 Forbidden Healing left in the deck, 1 True Silver Champion left in... No, both True Silvers have been used. 1 Forbidden Healing left in the deck, and 1 Ragnaros the Light Lord left in the deck for trying to heal outside of range of Ostkaka's potential top decks, where Ostkaka has only one Eviscerate remaining for face damage and I think a second SI7. So he needs to find those cards, but he doesn't have a way to combo those cards if he gets them. So,
Oh wow.
Yeah.
He played the agent right now. Well, that is weird.
He's just afraid of being unable to combo it in the future with draws like Azure Drake or Gadgets and Auctioneer, ruining his ability to combo things. So I like it from Ostkaka getting the expensive card out of his hand. But Forbidden Healing is top decked from Surrender, and he's able to regain so much life. Ostkaka really needs Gadgets and Auctioneer right now. Oh my gosh, he gets Gadgets and Auctioneer. He has a chance to come back in this game. He can find the second Conceal. He finds a second Eviscerate. I think you fire it away. Keep cycling your deck.
Yeah, you need prep.
Yeah, prep would be an amazing draw. Backstab.
Backstab on your own minion.
Yeah, so the remaining damage in Ostkaka's deck after that sequence of plays is 0. So he needs to rely on minion damage only to get through with no saps. So if Tyrion were to come down, which he knows that Surrender has because he sapped it earlier, there's no way he can win the game. That's why Ostkaka decides to concede there. And I think if we look back at this game in hindsight, so things that the players obviously don't know at the time, the key decision there is cycling on the Gadgets and Auctioneer and the timing that you do it with Rogue. And
Yes,
only getting 2 cards makes you extremely vulnerable to a quality Consecrate. And you have to ask yourself, is it necessary for me to cycle here? And Ostkaka felt like it was. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's really hard to try and determine, but he could have potentially gotten another Tomb Pillager down, played the Azure Drake, made Surrender clear those minions, and then had 8 or 9 mana to cycle with Gadgets and Auctioneer, and instead of drawing 2 cards, maybe draw 6 or 7 cards because he's got the additional coin and such, have a higher chance of hitting prep with it, and maybe it's a different game. But then also, maybe he just dies trying to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on the Gadgetin turn, but as you said, it changes the game completely. It's a completely different scenario because of the cycles that will be done with the Gadgetin after a second Tomb Pillager or the Azure Drake. I think it's pretty clear to see like the difference between, let's say, turn 6 Gadgetin Coin Conceal and the difference between an Azure Drake. Like you spend 7 mana to draw 2 cards and have nothing basically. If your Gadgetin dies on Equality Consecration, or Pyromancer Equality or other combinations, while Azure Drakes are giving you 1 card and a spell power, so they can't be really just ignored on the board as well. But you can hero power the same turn and gain 2 damage in the long term, right? So it's either you favor 2 damage from the hero power on 2 consecutive turns, or maybe just spread out during the game, or you favor 1 card when you don't necessarily need the card draw on that turn.
Yeah, I don't know if it's more about damage, but you do bring up a good point. That they do have to kill the Azure Drake still. We might have even seen Surrender try and kill the Azure Drake there, with maybe even Consecrate and Equality. Maybe you would have had to do it there. So it does create an interesting situation there. But Surrender's going to have another shot at taking down Rogue yet again, and it seems like he's going in with Face Shaman. This matchup's pretty good for the Face Shaman most of the time.
It is because most of the Rogues are not playing a single taunt, and healing abilities are limited to 1 or 2 Farseers. There's nothing else that can heal the Rogue. So every single point of damage is super important, let's say, then against a Reno Warlock that can just heal yourself at turn 6 in an ideal scenario, or turn 5 he has a coin and there's a really die straight from him.
Yeah, and Aggro Shaman does not have any lack of damage. They definitely do a lot of that, so...
I like this turn.
Yeah, I like it too. You do need the board control to win, and this Trog is so threatening on the board while you have 2 Feral Spirits on your hand, and you just saw a backstab used from the Rogue opponent, so if they don't have another backstab, they probably have to Shadow Strike this or use Deadly Poison to clear it, so they have only a few cards in their deck that can answer the Tunnel Trog. So, unfortunate for Surrender, though, that Ostkaka is able to have that second backstab there, but unfortunate for Ostkaka that his hand is looking not very juicy.
Yeah, and that Flame Wrath Faceless is just a terror card against the Rogue. It's very similar to a situation when you consider, like, yeah, I'll play an aggro deck, but suddenly I'm playing like a Handlock on turn 4, and what does Rogue do about that? There's no easy answer without the sap.
And the scary thing about the sap is that it comes back. If Ostkaka were to sap it, Surrender's still, his overload works out in such a way that he can still just play Feral Spirits in the following turn, and then play the Flame Wreath Faceless again after that because of how the overload works there. It's pretty cute there. So there wasn't actually that much risk by Surrender there, playing the Flame Wreath Faceless down.
Yeah, definitely correct. Especially since Shadow Strike is 3 mana and was Turn Force, and preparation would have been needed to help clear that 7/7 giant. Other thing that is worth mentioning is that Surrender just draw the ultimate bane of Rogue existence.
Yeah.
Just the Doomhammer. That is just, I'll just take that 16 point of damage and 4 turns of credit.
Yeah, Doomhammer, pretty good. Pretty good. Rogue's clock is especially slow at actually killing people nowadays because there has been the Gadgets and Auctioneer nerf, which means it takes one more turn for Rogue to start cycling their deck to find the damage to kill you. And that's one more turn you're getting Doomhammered in the face.
Yeah, and... oh my, this is like such a huge deal. Like, I feel like most of the Rogue players have the same reaction when they just see a Doomhammer being played on 10, 5 or 6, especially after a Flame Wreath Faceless that had already hit once. It's such a huge deal.
Yeah, it's just crushing. If you ever take a Flame Wreath Faceless to the face in that matchup, you have to feel like you've lost. Like, there's got to be a rule. Like, against Face Shaman, if Flame Wreath Faceless ever hits you, you probably have lost that game, except for a few very niche decks like Reno Warlock and Azoth Paladin that have tons of heal. Just taking 7 at any point means they're burned for the rest of the game. It's probably going to equal up to lethal.
And the reason why it feels like a loss now in current metagame is because of the fact that no one has access to a card like Healbot that heals for 8 and mitigates that one attack from a huge minion.
Sure, yeah. So you have to make sure you have Smash just for Flame Wreath Faceless because that guy is a problem. Now we have the Rogue Mirror starting up, and this is a matchup that revolves around a lot of reads and figuring out when you need to go all in or when you have time to sit back and try and cycle off your Gadgets and Auctioneer.
Especially Conceals are very powerful in this matchup because most people are just like kind of narrow-minded when it comes to the use of the Conceal when it comes to the mirror match because they feel like, oh, just concealing Gadgets is an instant win. The problem is that it's not the case anymore without the Blade Flurry. Yeah. Although the Conceal's Gadget and lifetime was heavily extended by the fact that there's almost no way of killing it when it's concealed, the fact is that most of the minions will just erase and deal damage, and then Conceal turns into a 8 damage or 10 damage Fire Blast for 1 mana.
Conceal definitely is a really good aggro card, just adding so much damage, allowing your Cold Bloods to connect. We see here Surrender coining out the Tomb Pillager instead of playing the 3-drop. The reason why is that contests the board a little bit better. Also allows him to go coin plus any 2-mana spell and Edwin to make a 6/6 Edwin. If he finds an Eviscerate or a Sap here, it's just absolutely huge to make a 6/6 Edwin and clear your opponent's minion. So you pretty much always want to be coin Tomb Pillagering in that situation. So I like the play.
Well, there's no downside unless your opponent silences the minion. So
yeah, here it's kind of awkward because he didn't find the Eviscerate or the Sap, but yeah, maybe you can still go for it with the Shiv just to be a little annoying, or you can hold out for something a bit better. It's tough to say what is the absolutely best line in this situation. You have some good plays, 6/6 Edwin being one of them. I don't think you want to go for Coin Ezra Drake. You have Earthen Ring being like a decent play, but the problem is it just gets farmed by that 5/5. So if you want to be the one initiating tempo, then the only play that really does that is the Shiv Coin Edwin. He's thinking about where to Shiv exactly.
I like the face. There's almost no need to kill him, damage a minion that has 4 HP because that only makes it easier to kill with a free drop that you don't plan to play this turn anyway, or deal with Deadly Poison.
And you want to be playing Drake next turn, so it doesn't really line up for you to be playing Deadly Poison, because if you play Deadly Poison, you're probably hanging a mana, unless you're concealing the Edwin, but you gotta imagine that's not likely to be sticking around.
Yep.
Oh, it might, though. But I imagine Ostkaka just trades into it here, holds on to the prep to make his own Giant Edwin, because he does have Leroy Conceal and the ability to make a Giant Edwin and conceal that also as possibilities.
That is insane when you consider that. But he goes for the Eviscerate this time, which is this is interesting. The only really terrifying scenario here is that your opponent goes for the Conceal himself with a 4-drop, like another Tomb Pillager.
Or this Violet Teacher could be concealed as well. Now that Ostkaka's down to 18 life and you don't have ways to remove the board, I feel like you have to be the one initiating an all-in first, so I would like to see Violet Teacher conceal, but he does go with the Drake, and that means Ostkaka's going to be able to go Leroy Conceal with 9 power on the board, setting up lethal if he so chooses to. But that means he may have to ignore the Drake, or he could just trade in his Drake, honestly. But yeah, Ostkaka can set up the 2-turn lethal.
Yeah, well, you have 11 damage this turn. If you go for the Leroy Conceal, then you have 11 damage next turn, which is 22. So you're missing 3 damage, and he just did draw. I mean, he had the Deadly Poison. He didn't need to get to the Eviscerate, but he got it anyway. So definitely, I would like to see a trade on the Azure Drake here.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid line. He has enough damage to get the job done. The Eviscerate top deck begs the question of maybe being able to go face, use Eviscerate, and play an Edwin this turn. Make a 6/6 Edwin while clearing your board and concealing a 5/4 and a 4/4. You push 9 damage, and then you threaten to push another 9 the following turn, which only adds up to 18. So it's not exactly a lethal setup, but it's not as risky, I guess.
But the problem is that you kind of leave the opportunity of your opponent killing your minions with double Fan of Knights, which is unlikely, but it might happen on turn 6. Well, that's interesting. No Edwin as well.
Oh, this makes sense. This guarantees the damage of the Edwin, because now you're hitting with the Deadly Poison twice. This is just clearly better than playing the Edwin Van Cleef.
Because of the synonym of charge when it comes to weapons.
Yeah, this way you get both deadly swings in, so now you're just threatening more damage. And that's going to be enough damage to take down Surrender. It looks like he's going to have 15, 16, 17, 18 damage, and Surrender can't really do anything to stop this damage.
Yep. If more mirror matches will be played by the Rogues, I would heavily consider playing Blade Flurry again.
Really?
It's very expensive, but...
Yeah, it's so slow. Oh.
Well, prep can help, right?
Sure, prep can definitely help, but one of my favorite cards in the Rogue Mirror matches is the South Sea Deckhand. Even though it dies to Fan of Knives, it does allow you to get some Cold Blood all-ins a little bit more flexibly, especially while you're running double Conceal, so I favor kind of... Instead of going for the defensive approach and reacting with Blade Flurry, I like being the one that initiates the Conceal all-ins first most of the time.
I see.
So just difference in play styles. We see Ostkaka, yeah, taking the game. Surrender had an opportunity a little bit earlier to try and go for a Violet Teacher Conceal, go kind of all in first, trying to establish board that way, but didn't have any of the damage to follow up, so he felt he wanted to wait for the Gadgets and Auctioneer, and Ostkaka had a hand with damage, and Ostkaka was able to get the damage in first, and what are you going to do? Sometimes you get rushed down by Rogue, so I don't think Surrender would have won if he went for the Violet Teacher Conceal, just because he only had 1 Cold Blood backing up that damage, so
yeah,
wasn't able to make it.
So now Ostkaka has taken his worst matchup than the Freeze Mage. At least it feels like so, because the Freeze Mage should win against the Rogue, and that is a psychological aspect as well when you're taking your best matchup in the decider match. In the decider game, sorry.
Yeah.
So if he wins with the Warrior now, that will put him in an advantageous position when it comes to tilting. An example, if Surrender is one of those players that tilts like more easily. I don't know him that well, but Ostkaka knows him very well.
Yeah, they're teammates after all. Yeah, Ostkaka is really like a no-nonsense sort of guy. He does not like taking the best matchups first, simply because he doesn't want to waste time, is what he says. He's just like, yeah, if I'm going to lose with my bad matchup, might as well just do it first try, rather than try and play all of these games out unnecessarily. So, a different approach than a lot of players, because a lot of players like taking their best matchups first.
Yep. Well, now let's see. There's the crucial weapon from Ostkaka, which will help immensely with 3 drops, But quite unfortunately for him, there are no free drops in Surrender's hand. But still, he will be able to develop a free drop. And without an agent and a backstab, you can't really help to feel kind of helpless against the kind of helpless against the floating berserker unless you will sacrifice a eviscerate or just sap it. That's kind of sad.
We see Surrender forgoing developing his Earthen Ring Farseer here because it won't get any effect and will just die for free. Basically, all it will be doing is 3 damage to Ostkaka's face and taking away half of a War X charge, and he doesn't feel like that the minion's worth it. He wants to save it for a situation where he can develop minions into the War X that don't die to the War X, forcing Ostkaka to spend the War X charge and additional cards to kill his minions, and then play it later when there's no threat of the War X so that the minion can actually get value, or play it in conjunction with another minion so that then Ostkaka has 2 minions to swing at, allowing it to get through damage.
Deadly poison. Well, I would still favor a 4-drop, a Tomb Pillager here, most likely.
Yeah, I agree. I think you just Tomb Pillager and pass. The War X charge gets decent value, but he may stick to the game plan of just denying that War X charge value altogether. Looks like he's just going to Deadly Poison, take care of the Acolyte, and then pass.
Really? I feel like he makes... Wow, okay.
I was thinking about the Earthen Ring Farseer still.
I would say that you probably want to play the Farseer anyway.
It does just die for free, so there's the cost of that, but he does end up playing it. He does get 1 life out of it because he was holding off the way he did, but in the end, the Earthen Ring Farseer's fate is still met with the War X, just taking it out.
I would not consider that free. I mean, I agree it's a huge loss to the weapon, but still, it dealt free damage, and more importantly, you just spent free mana that otherwise you would have been floating. And I think
he does have a lot of mana worth of cards in his hand, so you're right about that.
Still kind of awkward.
Yeah. The Rogue does not like playing from behind, and right now Surrender is definitely playing from behind.
It looks like a decent turn for the Azure Drake, but then it gets traded. Even if you kill the monkey, it gets traded with the Armor Smith and the weapon, and that's a problem. You will gain 1 card, which should have decent value, considering that you didn't draw a single sap, a single eviscerate. You have still 2 Gedzetans and 1 more Azure Drake. Here we go.
Yeah. Now he has the Auctioneer in his hand, but he still hasn't turned any of these Tomb Pillagers into coins yet, which is kind of awkward for Surrender. He was removing during those earlier stages, where he could have been maybe tempoing out some Tomb Pillagers to try and turn them into coins.
Yeah, I would definitely favor playing the Tomb Pillagers first. It would happen anyway if he didn't draw the Auctioneer now. But when you have a plan, it's so easier to make that plan happen, right? Because you know that you have the most important aspect of the plan, which is gets an Auctioneer, so those Tomb Pillagers have bigger value.
Yeah, he's looking for maybe an Eviscerate or a Sap to come down in conjunction with these Tomb Pillagers, clean up the board. Finds a second prep. Not the most useful thing at the moment, but he could potentially use it, clean up that Frothing Berserker if he feels it's scary enough. I imagine he's just going to take some damage here, Dagger up. The Frothing will probably hit him for, 5 or 6 damage, but it's not too big of a deal.
Huh.
Yeah, it's just, you can't waste those preps while you have the gadgets in your hand. So, here comes a little bit of damage, and him forgoing removing minions allows Ostkaka to get a pretty big battle rage here. So, Ostkaka taking advantage of the current situation on board, drawing some cards, plays around Shadow Strike, probably by accident, but is able to do that.
It's a byproduct, I would say.
Yeah. And then,
it's very interesting. Let's send them damage to the face. That's the Flame Breath Faceless that we talked about, right? Which can potentially be bigger. Wanted to talk about that byproduct of the Whirlwind effect on those minions and just play around the Eviscerates and Sinister Strikes. I feel like almost there's no difference if your minions have 3 or 4 HP against most of the targets against most of the sources of damage from Rogue. Because Eviscerate deals 4, Azure Drake deals 4, Tomb Pillager deals 5, Auctioneer deals 4, and backstab and agent deals 4, right? So
Yeah.
you play around basically everything, unless it's a direct attack from a free drop or a deadly poison, and that's about it. So there's a merit to just play around those cards by maybe even without backing it up with a battle rage at the same time.
For sure, yeah. It's just inconvenient for Rogue to deal with injured 3 health minions, and not to mention that he also gets the added benefit of Battle Rage. So yeah, we may have even seen him just tempo out the Ghoul there just to push damage if he didn't have the Battle Rage, like you said. It's kind of interesting to think about, right? Just damaging your own minions to help play around removal. It's kind of a weird concept. So now we have Ostkaka in a situation where he's looking at this 8-4 Gadgets and Auctioneer and trying to figure out how likely is it that I'm going to die. And truthfully, I don't think it's very likely he dies. So the max damage from Surrender with both preps gone is Leroy Cold Blood Eviscerate, which is 10, 14, then the 18 is 22. 23 damage is the maximum damage Surrender can do. So if Ostkaka can set up a situation where he has lethal the following turn, then Ostkaka will win the game. Is there any way he can deal enough damage to make it so Surrender dies in the following turn?
Well, let's say he Cochrane leads for 4 and it deals another 4 next turn. So that's 8, that's 9 with Armor Smith, 10 with Armor Smith. Well, it should be doable easily, I would say. Unless there will be another prep that will help out, squeeze out the mana this turn.
Ah, there's no preps remaining in the deck, so Surrender has to do this.
Oh yeah, right,
prepless.
correct.
He's just not prepared for this. So he's got to clear because he's too afraid of dying, and then if he clears, that buys Ostkaka more turns, and then if Ostkaka has more turns, then he's going to be able to play Ragnaros and Grom. So this is looking very grim for Surrender. Starting to make his way, clearing. He needs to find an Eviscerate to deal with this Brawling Berserker.
Well, he has a sap as well, right?
Does have sap as well, but that's going to be the second sap, so then things like Ragnaros and Grom get really scary, so he's really fishing for that Eviscerate and finds it just a little bit too late, is forced in a situation where he has to use the sap. And I just want to mention one thing about this gameplay and how this game is sort of panned out. We still see the Tomb Pillager in Surrender's hand. He had opportunities in the earlier stages of the game where he chose to deadly poison down minions, he chose to remove things where he could have been potentially ignoring those things, playing Tomb Pillager down, and having some smoother cycle turns with these Gadgets and Auctioneers he's been using.
Yeah, correct. Well,
so it's something to think about.
This is so interesting when we talk about Hearthstone. There's so many possibilities and little tweaks that affect the entire game. And if you're not giving it like the entire turn to think about, then most likely you're gonna miss something.
Mm-hmm.
So especially interesting for newer viewers, I think, because they probably most of the time what I hear about Hearthstone is when people compare it to other card games, it's like, so why is it so simple when you compare it to other games? And it's not that simple. It's not a simple game to play.
Yeah, definitely not. There's small things that make up a lot of differences here. Ostkaka's picking up the Finley. I don't think he wants to be using the Finley this turn, though. I want to see him try and clear the board completely and just try and out-heal Surrender at this point. After seeing so many removal sources used by Surrender, I think it's actually quite possible for Ostkaka to completely outlive all of the damage in Surrender's deck. Surrender has Leroy Cold Blood Eviscerate remaining for his max damage of only 14. There may be a second Eviscerate in there, but that still only brings the damage up to 18, and he has no saps remaining to get through taunts. So there is a pretty high possibility that Ostkaka can completely just outlast what Surrender can do with his deck.
Correct, that can happen. That can happen, but still, minions will be problematic.
For sure, yeah. Surrender's got a big hand size.
Well, there has to be the Eviscerate turn. Because you need to deal with that 6 attack minion that will most likely will just be lethal next turn. With how usually a warrior plays. Yeah, still like this is 8 damage going to the face next turn with combined 2 from this turn's agent. Setups a pretty decent board.
22 max damage from Surrender's side, so Ostkaka has to figure out a way that he can respect that, but when there's no saps, He just doesn't have very many good things he can play alongside the Bloodhoof Brave if he wants to go the defensive route. So he's kind of pinned in against a wall here, maybe forced to use Grom this turn or Ragnaros this turn. Play a little defensively.
What do you think about just playing Ragnaros this turn? You have the access to 10 points of damage next turn with just Gromash Activator. And if you kill one of the minions with the Ragnaros, not sure.
He's too afraid of the 14 potential damage coming out of the Hand of Surrender, so he's going to take a bit more defensive approach. Look for it, armor up, look for a healing hero power off of Finley, and then play the Bloodhoof Brave. Just try to be as defensive as possible, try and outlast this 14 burst potential from Surrender. Goes for the armor up from Druid as his hero power choice. Just trying to survive.
And doesn't play the Blood to Ichor. I thought that maybe Blood to Ichor would be useful this turn just to damage the agent, get a get a 2/2 minion on board, which will be able to trade with a newly played minion from Rogue's side.
Yeah, he could have played it out. He's kind of saving it for a Grom activator, though, just in case maybe he squeezes in 2 hero powers or something, or Surrender gets to a point where he starts fatiguing, as we see him cycling a Fana Knives here. He has very few cards remaining in his deck. If he takes like 1 or 2 points of fatigue damage, that Grom Bloodtaker could kill him, but there are just too many minions for Ostkaka to try and outlast at this point. Maybe he had to play a little bit riskier. I favored Ostkaka's line as well of trying to outlast the Rogue's damage, not expecting him to have this many minions, try and play around the burst damage. When it turns out Surrender only had minions, and the correct line ended up maybe being to just drop one of your big 8 drops, kind of YOLO it out there, and hope they didn't have all 3 of the necessary cards, because Surrender needed Leroy, Cold Blood, and Eviscerate. Granted, he has very few cards remaining in his deck. He needed all 3 of those to kill you, whereas the line Ostkaka ended up taking played around that, but then loses to random collection of minions. So you have to try and figure out which one would be more likely in the case, and Ostkaka favored that the damage combo would be more likely, maybe picks up off reads and things like that as well. So it's really hard, those tricky decisions that end up deciding games.
I like how you played, how you said, random collection of minions. I feel like it's one of the aspects from current Rogue builds is that it actually got more consistent with the amount of minions that they are playing.
Yeah.
At least in current metagame.
Yeah, especially since the old metagame Rogue had sprints in it and no gadgets and auctioneers. So just the inclusion of that one must-kill minion forces a lot of players to use a lot of removal on a bunch of minions, which makes it even seem like they have even more minions because you're forced to kill gadgets and auctioneer. And then once they play gadgets and auctioneers, they had Tomb Pillagers in. The old sprint Rogue used to only have like 8 minions in the whole deck.
Yep. That's correct, and it was a pretty different ball game at that point. But Surrender wins the entire match, and advances to the winners match in this group when he will be playing against the winner of the next match that we have after the break. So that's not the end of the road for Ostkaka. That will just be, kind of pushed down the ladder, and we'll wait for a loser of the next match, and that will be battling it out for the second guaranteed spot for the Shanghai offline finals. What is worth mentioning that Surrender is just only 1 match away from having that guaranteed spot.
Yeah, and that guaranteed spot's pretty exciting because $50,000 are on the line in that Shanghai LAN final. So a lot of players really want to be qualifying for that. It's going to be some really intense series. Hopefully we get to see some more great action. We saw Surrender doing some pretty crazy plays there against Ostkaka, some bluffs, some reads. Pretty cool stuff. Can't wait to see